able to do this. So I hope that's okay with everyone. Basically, hopefully you're off to a start with your team and getting that put together. And I'm going to share the bulletin just so it's up here. Well, the season can get started. Looking at first practice yesterday, scheduled games can start on January 21st. Then we're looking at sportsmanship voting, declaration of a festival if you'd like to participate in one. And there's a piece in there about the 6 to 8 games in the schedule. You know, it's not the end of the world, but that is the goal, is to play a minimum of 6, a maximum of 8. And then the festivals is an additional round of games that we wouldn't count towards that 6 to 8. And I would just put a piece out there that if you have interest in hosting one, we'd like to know sooner than later so that people can start inviting schools and get that planned ahead of time. And we've already had a couple reach out, willingness to be able to do that. So if your school does have the ability to host, 3 or 4 other schools, 2 or 3 or 4 other schools to come together and have a year-end festival, we would greatly appreciate that. We did move away from playing championships 2 years ago. Back in 2020, the committee got together, a lot of feedback from coaches and schools saying that, there were some that are very supportive of the championship, and there were many that said that it kind of changes the dynamic of the sport. And we'll talk a little bit more about that when we get further into this with the expectations around unified basketball. This is a partnership between the Maine Principal Association and Unified Champion Schools. We work very closely with Special Olympics. It is in the school setting, so we consider it ours, and it is their branding and they consider it theirs. So it's been a great partnership between the two entities. And, we've had growing pains over the years with around mostly playoffs and philosophies on how the game should be played. But I think that has continued to get better the more conversations we have over the years. And I would encourage people, if you have questions at any point in time, feel free to jump in, ask a question, raise your hand, put it in the chat, any of those things. One of the pieces that needs to be updated in the bulletin, and Ian sent us the information this afternoon, we need to get the branding links in there. There are some requirements from Special Olympics that if you're participating in this, that they need to be recognized as well for their contributions. I'm sure many of you have benefited from their grants to get your program up and running. Ian, anything you'd like to say about the branding?
No, it's just one of those things that, like you said, Mike, it's a good recognition point for us, and show that there is a relationship between the schools and Special Olympics. I will mention that back in 2019, when this was first established, we were able to supply schools with unified sport patches to apply to their uniforms. And that offer is still available to new schools or schools that are in need of those patches. So if a school is in need of some patches to get that branding on their uniforms, I'd highly suggest reaching out to me, and we'll get those ordered up and shipped off to you as soon as possible to get those onto the uniforms.
Ian, I know we still have a couple schools trying to get up and running this year. Grant funding still available?
Yeah, so there is grant funding still available. Those new schools, so first year schools are eligible for up to $2,500 for the first year. Second year for funding would be $2,000 max. And we are opening it up again this year for any school that has already received the 2 years of funding, another opportunity to receive up to $1,000 to support unified basketball. So if there's new schools or existing schools, know that there is funding readily available And a funding application could be submitted to us, and we'll get that turned around and hopefully get something approved and provide you that support that you need to keep this this program running.
Very good.
Ian,
Yes,
it's Frosty. How are you doing?
good for us. How are you?
I'm good. Welcome back. Hey, so a couple of questions. One, when you say funding, you said new schools. Does that existing schools? Is there like an existing school less than 3 years, or existing schools doesn't matter for funding? And if it is for existing schools, what's the funding for?
So good questions for Aussie. Funding is for all schools at this point, but those that have received 2 years of funding already, they would be eligible for $1,000 for this year. That funding could be eligible for transportation, officials, maybe you need some new uniforms, maybe that's a coach stipend. But really any one of those types of examples, or really any expense that the unified basketball team would have, would be able to, that funding would be able to use to support that team.
All right, and then a follow-up question. Would our AD have that? Or, I mean, I'll talk to Daly and ask Daly where we are with that. Because the transportation stipend would help out the kids who have to take the metro. And by the way, I'm Farasi, I'm from Portland area. So a lot of our students can't take the metro. So we'd have to pay for transportation. And we've been trying to solve this issue. And if this stipend could help that, we would open it up, it would open it up to other schools. And then the other thing, it was the package I would, the festival signups. Will the ADs have access to that, or is that a Mike thing? Mr. Yeah.
Listen,
How will we know? How will we know? Like if I tell me, hey, Mike, we want to do the festival, but we don't want to host it, contact Mike, listen.
Kitchen.
yeah, they can email me. If folks are willing to host for us, they can, there's an AD has a form that they can fill out right on our website, the interest in championship event form. We've got unified festivals listed right in there. So if your school is willing to host that, if not, just have them contact me to sign up for a festival. The other question.
And like Mike had mentioned before in the chat, the funding application is in the bulletin. And Mike's kind of hovering over that right now. So you can find that in the bulletin or also on our Special Olympics website, somaine.org.
Yeah, and if you're wondering where the bulletin is, if you go to the MPA website and you click on interscholastic activities, that lists all of the activities that we have. And then there's unified sports, you click on and there's a basketball bulletin in there, and then you'll find the live link right there. So if you have any issues, please contact our office or contact Ian directly. Great questions to get us going. Any others before I move on? Yes, if people could please mute when you're not talking, it reduces the background noise and takes away some of the confusion. So I appreciate that. Remember that there are 3 unified student athletes on the floor and 2 unified student partners at all times. We can't waver on that. Team roster should be no more than 22, and that includes your bench people. You know, we have students that have gone through their eligibility and our assistant coaches and so on. Make use of that. Any opportunity to keep kids involved is great, but we would like to limit that to 22. If you in a situation where you have so many kids, you know, look at forming another team, I would say at that point in time, because we want as many kids to be able to play as possible. Ian, would you mind talking a little bit about the player development model for us?
Absolutely. So unified sports, for those that aren't aware, we do have 3 different models for unified sports, and player development is kind of right in the middle model. And player development does have a few modifications to it. And as you'll see in the bulletin here, teammates of higher ability serve as mentors to assist players of lower ability. Lower ability teammates may not have the necessary sports skills, and we're making a few rule modifications to kind of define players' roles, but also prevent maybe some player dominance. And we can go over what player dominance is at a later time. But this is really in here to kind of, again, keep the philosophy of basketball, unified basketball, about the athletes, and really making sure that everybody is meaningfully involved in this season. So if you haven't, and you are a coach or even athletic director, to get some more information about what unified sports really is, and part of a requirement too, as far as being a head coach for unified sports, is completing that coaching unified sports course that's free online through the National Federation of High Schools. In that, you'll get a good understanding of the different varieties within the models themselves. So if you haven't already completed that course, definitely get on it and make sure that you have a full understanding of the meaning of player development and the model and philosophy behind it.
Very good. Thank you. And any questions?
Yeah, Ian, this is Jill Plord from Maranacook. If we've completed that in the past, should we is there a certain number of years that we need to redo that course?
Great question, Jill. And typically in Special Olympics, we say every 3 years. So if you've completed that within the last 3 years, you're all set. But we would like a refresher of that course if you've taken it beyond 3 years at this point.
Great. Any others? Okay, very quickly, just some game rules. I know that folks can read the bulletin, but it is a women's basketball. They are 20-minute halves running time. The clock does stop for the foul shots, substitutions in the last minute of each half. We do a 4-minute running time overtime with the same stipulations for in the event of a tie. 5 timeouts for the game, and those can be useful in just organizing, especially at the beginning of the year. That's why we give you 5. Unified student partners are not to score more than 25% of the team points. I know even 25% causes some irritation at times when some folks are playing with the philosophy that our athletes are not going to score. That is not a requirement from the player development model. That is a stipulation that some of you folks have put on yourselves. So we encourage you more than anything to communicate with each other prior to the game. Coaches to communicate. Make sure that you're well aware of how the game is going to go, what your philosophy is around this, and certainly athletic directors, as you're making schedules, to make sure that you're getting schools that are kind of like-minded when you do that.
And I'll also mention to that, or add to that, Mike, is, this is really to kind of put the hands in the game in the hands of the athletes as much as possible. However, we didn't want to take away from, the opportunity for partners to score, even given the scenario that we've got maybe some athletes out on the court that provide a fantastic pass for somebody cutting to the basket for an easy layup that a partner should be taking, given the fact that, one of our athletes provided a great assist, which is part of the game. So again, understanding that some teams do take the philosophy that none of my partners are going to score, but know that it is part of the game as well, and it is allowed given the 25% rule. So just keep that in mind when it comes down to the game itself.
Hey,
Very good.
Ian, so I, as a soccer official, I hope there's no basketball officials out there, and hopefully some people can appreciate this next comment. Is there a way to talk to the officials about officiating the game in the manner that it's supposed to be played? I'm okay for a ghost foul every once in a while, but sometimes the clock is delayed for like 3 shots. The foul didn't happen, but we call a foul. It's just things that take away from the game. And as a coach trying to coach the basketball and the skills that are needed for the game, I can't coach that. Like, you know what I mean? I can't coach, and I can't coach against it. So it's hard for a play, like, because it also creates contentment by some people who know, like, why is that kid getting? That's not fair. And I can rationalize it up to a point, but to a point it's like, we shouldn't have that happen as much as it happens. And this is particular to my games. I don't know about anyone else's. but it happens a lot.
So for us, yeah, I think you're bringing up some valid points and concerns. And like Mike said before, I think it's very much recommended that prior to each game, that you, the other team, coach, staff, as well as the officials get together and discuss, all these things that you're talking about. Here's where my team's at. There may be times that, there might be a little bit more lenience needed, but if you have that open line of communication at the beginning of the game, hopefully that can create a standard for the game moving forward. But you bring up some very valid points, and we are seeing variances between, one official to another official, and some people also thinking that it's the nice thing to do, so this is what I got to do. But you're absolutely right. You're trying to teach basketball, and it's about basketball, and part of learning the game is following the rules as well. So very much I would highly encourage an open dialogue with officials as well as the other team coaching staff at the beginning of every game before you get going.
And I
And
will
we'll
also,
sorry, Mike.
that's
But
all right.
we'll also communicate with officials too, to kind of relay that message and also share the bulletin so that they're aware of the rule modifications and things of that nature as well.
Yeah, and for us, I would also add that, we struggle as as a soccer official, we struggle in all our officials to get consistency from board to board and official to official. There's not a lot of training that we have time to do with unified basketball officials, that they're officiating varsity, JV, junior high games. And then they show up to a unified game. Hey, I got a call. I need to do this game. And they can use every bit of help in how it should be called as well. And I would always encourage them to be a little more lenient at the beginning of the year as the season, as they're learning the rules, and then kind of tighten it up as the season gets going, which is opposite of teaching philosophy. But those kids are learning the rules as they go. And many of them have a great feel for who to call it on and how strictly to call it. But you're right, it is very inconsistent. We haven't done a ton of training with them, but we will continue to communicate. And our commissioner officials, Jeff Benson, very involved in this program. I'm sure he will help us get that word out as he always does. So,
Hey, Biss, it's
Yes.
Jeremy from Old Town.
sure.
Hey, one of the things that we kind of look at doing up here in the Bangor area is that kind of tapered approach where we kind of teach a little bit of, or I should say officiate a little more leniency in the beginning part of the season, and then taper into a more, I guess you could say, strict understanding on the rules. So yeah, but again, I would definitely, and again, I'm speaking from the AD perspective. On that side, I think that's something that definitely needs to be communicated in that pre-meeting with the coaches and other teams and whatnot on where you are with that developmental level of your students, or where they are in the game for that matter. So just a food for thought.
Thank you, Jeremy. I appreciate that. So hopefully that gives us a little piece of the officiating side of things. As we work down through some of the pieces of play, we've talked about the first few. No full court pressing. Unified partners should not be playing a zone. But we do know it's hard for some of our unified athletes to track and follow who they're guarding. We do allow them to pick a spot to guard and play a little bit of zone. But it shouldn't be the focus. We talked about 75%. There should be meaningful involvement for everyone. That goes back to the player dominance that Ian talked about. We want to get kids involved. We want this to be a positive. I don't think anybody enjoys leaving the gym and having someone in a unified basketball game upset because they don't feel like they played enough or got enough opportunity to dribble or shoot or whatever. So we want to make sure that everybody is getting their fair share of play. And again, if an official determines a player is dominating play, that official shall sanction the player, and a coach consequences for non-compliance, encourage substitution, a warning, a technical foul, we would hope it would never get to an ejection, and in fact, haven't seen that in our years of doing it, but, you know, and communicate, if we got involved, we would be communicating with the athletic administrator. But we want this to be a positive experience for everyone involved. The bullet here, unified partners use common sense to restrain themselves from taking the game out of the athlete's hands. We talked about that. You shouldn't, the unified partner may not, as we said, score more than 25% of the points, play defense against an opposing unified athlete, steal the ball from a unified athlete, or set screens against an opposing unified athlete. That the unified partners are there to support and make this game successful for our unified athletes. Unified athletes should try their best to get the athletes to rebound. However, they, you know, if that ball bounces to them, they certainly can rebound. If it's going to hit them right in the face, they should be able to get that rebound. But we do want when possible, those unified athletes to be doing the rebounding as well. Each game should start with a jump ball between the two athletes. We talked about 4 minutes. Need to be able to provide at least one certified official. It's okay to do a game with one. Nice to bring a younger person along and have 2 officials if possible. Schools should provide facilities for both the male and female athletes with supervision. And, you know, athletic trainer, we know every school doesn't have them for every event, but if possible, it's very good to have one there. We could have medical conditions, and certainly in the day and age of COVID, it's helpful to have another set of eyes there and be able to help out. So that's the piece that I have, just kind of running through the bulletin. I don't need to keep people all day, but would love to be able to answer any questions. That the conversation we've had so far has been great. If there's issues that people want to discuss, or Ian, if you've got anything else, this would be the time.
I think it'd be a good time just to open the floor up, Mike. Yeah.
Yep, I agree.
Hi, guys. Paula from Bonnie Eagle. Can I have a clarification on the funding? Is it only for teams that have been going for 2 years?
It's actually for anybody, Paula. So,
Okay.
First year funding, 2,500, second year funding, 2,000. And then anybody that's already received the 2 years of funding is eligible for $1,000.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hey, Jeremy, this is Ferrasi from Portland. Can you host us at a site? I would love to have my kids come up. I try to treat basketball like an adventure and also give them experiences that they can, you know, talk about as they get older. We typically travel, I think probably Cape Elizabeth is our furthest. But if you talk to Mike Daly, if you host one, please think of us. I'd love to have the kids come up for a longer trip, provided we can stay safe and distance and all on the bus. But I'm no pressure, just asking. Keep us in mind if you do have one. I'd love to have our kids come up. Or anyone that's far. I'd just love to take something further than South Portland and Cape Elizabeth if funding permits.
Yeah, definitely. We unfortunately do not host one, but Orono does, which is the town right next door to us. And they put on one. They put on a great one, and it's in conjunction with a couple other outside entities that support it. So it's generally big. So I would say I'll put his contact information in the chat, but you want to get a hold of Mike Archer, who over at Orono High School, and he would be your point of contact for that.
Thank you.
For us, even if it isn't the Bangor area, they do a fairly large one. We may have some others in central Maine, maybe a little bit longer trip than in the Portland area, but I think we haven't confirmed it yet, but I think the Alphon Youth Center in Waterville may be hosting one, and there may be one at Thomas, so we can get that word out.
Awesome. That's what we went a couple years ago to Thomas,
Yep.
I think, for the preseason thing. So yeah.
Hey, Biss, what's the downfall if we scheduled with Portland as one of our and maybe get you to come up here and play a couple of teams and do like a round robin in one day or something.
That would be fine.
Thinking outside the box.
Nope, that would be fine.
Our kids need some more movement and they would love it. So that'd be
I need to get out of that city there for us.
Right, some of those kids probably never been north of
That could be the
Gray,
reverse of me.
right?
New York
They always
or
go south,
California.
they don't never go north. Right?
There's another world above Augusta. Just letting you know.
Whole nother country up here.
Oh, yeah.
Augusta.
Oh, we're still using the same size balls, 28.5?
Yes.
28.5, okay, that works.
Great. Do we have any other questions, folks?
Ian, just the patches. I would love to get those soon so we can put them up there. We haven't started. I don't know when we start, but I know our first game's the 21st. That's all I do know, but I'd love to get the patches anytime soon.
Ian, hi, Paula again from Bonnie Eagle. I also need patches for my middle school and high school team.
I'm on mute. Typical
Oh.
Zoom. Would you guys mind just shooting me an email with the number of patches you guys would need, both Bonnie Eagle and you, Ferrasi at Deering? And then I will certainly get those ordered up, and anybody else as well that needs those, shoot me an email, number of patches, and we'll get those off to you as soon as possible.
Hey, Paul, I hope you're on our schedule this year. Our kids love going to Bonnie Eagle, Cape, and South Portland, so I'm hoping that's happening. If it's not, don't tell me.
No, we are. We're looking forward to it. We're excited.
All right, cool. Oh, Ian, and this is more business. I had a parent ask me this, and I didn't tell Coach Daly. She was concerned because she didn't feel like some kids should have been playing the unified basketball game. We had a nice private conversation after it about disabilities and what they look like and don't look like, and she was just concerned like these kids should not be players. She was just adamant, and I'm like, but I will bring that up to Daly so he can address it. I tried, but I'm not gonna have like we can't give her. I'm not giving people IEPs, stuff like that. But she was adamant, so I'm just letting you know. I had with my fourth year. I've never had a parent ask me that. I don't know if anyone else has asked that, so I was floored, and I was like taken aback.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right, Ferrasi, as far as, some disabilities you just can't see. And obviously what I would refer to is the policies and procedures, which does outline the eligibility status of both athletes and partners, and making a school decision on what your determination is for those students. But definitely referencing those definitions that clearly define what roles each student can play. And by no means are we saying nobody can't participate, because Unified is open to anybody, but it just might be that you might be an athlete or you might be a partner, and that's going to be the role based off the definition. So please keep in mind with that as well, that there are clear, defined definitions of those roles in the policies and procedures. That's also on the MPA website as well, through the Unified Sports section of the site there.
I'm gonna go. I hope to see you at Unified in the summer, Ian. I hope that we have Orno. I miss going up to Orno and doing my running long jump. So hopefully that happens. I hope everyone has.
You're not the only one, for us. We're ready to get back there. It's a long time coming. We've got a lot of Special Olympics coaches out there, and I know Unified is Special Olympics as well, but believe me, we're getting that question multiple times. Are we going to Sugarloaf? We're going to Orno? We going? And believe me, we're working our butts off to make sure that we can do that. But it's a lot of hoops to go through too. And Mike will tell you, just with working with the MPA and all the stuff that they're going through just to put on sports season. So we're doing everything we can, and we're fingers crossed we'll be able to do that. So concentration right now, Unified basketball. We can do this. So this is what it's all about right now. So
Yes, I agree. And it's nice to get some momentum back for unified basketball. We kind of lost a little bit, but now we've got some new schools looking at starting back up. So we're excited we want this in every school, to be honest with you. And I'll just put a plug in. This is about unified basketball, but we are sponsoring unified bocce this spring. So get that ball rolling at your school as well. So. Folks, anything else? We really appreciate your time today, and hope we have a great season, and it's a positive for everyone. And I wish you all the best of luck. Please do not, I put my email in the chat. Your athletic administrators and principals certainly have it, but as a coach, if you have questions, don't hesitate to contact Ian or I. Have a great season. Happy New Year.
Thank you.
All right, thank
Thank
you.
you.